Greetings, Denver and Montreal. This is Denver Open Source Users Group, and tonight we have a virtual meeting. This is the first virtual one we've had all year, so still trying to relearn the StreamYard platform that we have started to use. Well, actually, we've been using it for a while, but anyway, tonight we're going to talk about the Uno platform with Jérôme Laban from Montreal, and we don't have a lot of sponsors tonight, so we're just going to dive right into it. I'll bring up Jérôme here.
Hello.
Okay,
Daniel.
There he is. So I have a quick question first, and then I'll let you introduce yourself and get on with the presentation. So the question is, how is the weather in Montreal?
It's hot. It's really hot for an October. It's 20 degrees Celsius. I don't know. I don't do the translation in Fahrenheit, unfortunately, even though I should be able to as a Canadian. But yeah, it's pretty hot. So even though snow is not that far away, I would think. But
Okay, sunny days.
Sunny days, very sunny days. So that's a very good time of the year.
Okay, so why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes.
And we will get, hold on. Oh, there we go. Except I have the wrong person. There we go. Oops. All right, I just
There I am.
accidentally removed. Okay, I think you're back again.
I'm back.
There you
again.
are.
Okay.
Now let me see if I can get the right person.
Excellent. I think you were cut out, but that's fine. So hello everyone, and thank you for joining for this live stream about the Uno platform. My name is Jérôme Laban. I'm the CTO of the Uno platform project. It's an open source project that we've been developing for the past 4.5 years publicly, and that was available for a very long time privately. So I'm going to discuss about all of those details about how that does, and you can ask your questions. I'm looking at the comments on the side, and you can interrupt. I will adjust the presentation based on what you're telling me. So let's go. So the problem in development in general, is about cross-platform development. That's what we're trying to solve with the Uno platform. It's all about cross-platform development, and when you want to develop for Windows, Mac OS, Linux, iOS, the web, and Android, and there are others like Tizen and others development like this. If you use each individual platform to get to the development for each individual of them, you're gonna get pretty much duplication. So if you want Windows, maybe it's going to be just C#. Mac OS, it's going to be some Swift or Objective C, and then on Linux, it's going to be some other framework that may be a different language. So we tried we're trying to get to that to solve that problem. And the other problem associated to this is the fact that you have legacy business application. A lot of them they're on the .NET ecosystem, or and not just that ecosystem specifically. That's the ecosystem that we're targeting, and a lot of those that are developing for Windows mainly want to migrate to the web, and rewriting to JavaScript is not necessarily something that the developer of those applications may want to do. So it has a high cost of rewrite, and you introduce new bugs, and then you have to find new people that understand the technologies that are being used underneath for the web or others. And it may not be the case that you can reuse all the code that you've developed for the web and reuse it for other targets, depending on a variety of reasons. And then you also have the problem of skills and training and developer availability. It's not easy to find people, especially at this time of reducing the number of the economy is reducing a little bit. It's slowing down a bit. So that's what we're trying to resolve. And our solution is to allow developers to write an application once using XAML and C#, or just C#. That will be coming in the future, and deploy it to every platform that is available. So we're talking about WinUI, so the logo on the left, and the Uno platform that is on the right. So we're talking about mobile, web, mobile screens, consoles, and the web, and using .NET. So what we're doing is getting WinUI everywhere. So just to make sure that that WinUI is understood. WinUI is the UI framework that's promoted by Microsoft. That is based on a markup language that is called XAML, and that is backed by the C# language. It allows, and I'm going to be showing it to you, how that works and what we can do with it. And our goal is to make sure that people that develop applications can make them run on all those targets, and with giving the ability to have pixel perfect UIs, so you can have the same look and feel on all platforms, but also have different variabilities on each individual targets, and I'm going to show that as well. The important part is having a single code base, not having to basically have to fix the same bugs multiple times. It runs pretty much anywhere .NET runs, so we're talking about many variety of Linux devices. We're talking about the web where .NET runs, Windows, Android, iOS using .NET. There's also a third-party ecosystem that already exists that targets .NET, that very large set of packages that already exist on NuGet, an equivalent of NPM, but for the .NET world. And it, of course, is free and open source, so you can use it whenever you want. You can take the source, build it yourself. We also have a set of Figma plugins, so if you're interested in talking about this afterwards, I'm going to have a small demo about this. So we're talking about being able to take Figma designs and put them in an application and have that run properly. And we also have VS Code integration, so I'm going to be demoing that later on. When we're talking about Uno applications, we're talking about being truly native, and it's not something that is on top of something else. We're using whatever the platform provides underneath. So on Windows, we're not present. It's just Windows, except for Windows 7. I'm going to talk about that later on. And then on UIKit, on Apple devices, we're using UIKit. On macOS, we're using AppKit. On Android, we're using Views, HTML5 when running on the web, using WebAssembly. And if you have questions about WebAssembly, let me know. I can dive into that part a little bit more later on. And when running on Linux, we're using the Skia library, which is the component that the Chromium browser component uses for rendering itself. So if you're using Chrome or Edge or other browsers that are based on this, they're using Skia to render themselves. When we're talking about rendering a UI, there are many things that can be possible with the types of rendering that are possible. So on the left, you can have canvas rendering. So when we're talking about canvas rendering, we're talking about applications that render every pixel one by one. So accelerated or not, but basically having individual pixels rendered. So that means that those applications are basically rendering on a bitmap. So they're rendering everything by themselves, and they're not using the platform to render anything. So that means that it's going to be high fidelity when across platforms, but when we're talking about individual behaviors that are provided by the platform, then you may be having issues with, let's say, for instance, when you have a text box or text input that you want to have the native behavior on top of. Sometimes it may become difficult, or the platform needs to the UI needs to follow the updates of the platform, so it can be a bit difficult. On the other hand, completely, you have React or Xamarin Forms, if you know about that one, or Maui if you're interested in the .NET ecosystem, that pretty much use the native controls and lay out those controls as is. So with a little bit of adjustments, but the idea is that the underlying controls are used exactly as they are, and what that means is that the application is going to look like what the platform is intended for it to be. So that has an advantage of being close to the platform and natural for the developers, for the users of the application. But when you're a developer, a developer, it can make it difficult for having something that looks across. So you may be that your designers are not going to like you that much because your application is not going to be exactly the same across platforms, and you're going to have a hard time tweaking your UI to get there. What Uno is doing is basically blending in between. We are on most platforms taking the native controls, stripping out the Chrome, and rendering everything around. So what that means is that the UI is going to look the same everywhere, but it's going to be using the underlying controls to render the content. So that means that it's kind of the best of both worlds in a sense. And that's the target that we've chosen for the rendering of Uno platform. So I'm gonna get into demos very quickly. The most important question is licensing and sustainability. I'm gonna get there. Uno platform is free. It's open source and it's under the Apache 2 license. And it's sustained through the Red Hat model. So basically, you use the platform for free. But if you're finding issues, then you're gonna have you can contact us, and we offer enterprise support for you to get your bugs fixed. So that's how we finance and we sustain our project. It's just not just open source, plain and simple, and we don't take anything that enters the backlog, because we have clients that are paying to get their issues fixed. So that's that. So let's go dive into the demos directly, and so you're gonna see what that means to run the Uno platform. So let me go directly there to Visual Studio Code. So it's a bit messy at this point. I probably should have closed a bit more about all of this, but the idea is that when you're in Visual Studio, you have a set of extensions, Visual Studio Code. We're providing an extension that's called Uno Platform, and it relies on other extensions like the C# one, and it provides a set of features that are available to the developer. So what we're providing here is a set of helpers that allows to develop properly your applications, like for instance here IntelliSense or code completions and things like that, and provide access to all the features that the platform provide in Visual Studio Code. We also support Visual Studio for Windows. It runs in code spaces. It runs on GitHub. It runs using Writer if you're into that kind of development IDE. And that's the idea about all this. So when you're creating an Uno application, you're basically getting a set of targets. So you're getting the mobile targets. So we're talking about iOS, Android, and Mac Catalyst. You're gonna get support for Skia GTK. So this one is interesting because it allows to get to Linux. It allows to get to Windows 7 as well, which is a target that Microsoft doesn't even support at this point, aside from just doing WPF. You have also the support for Linux frame buffer. So if you're doing some IoT or things like that, then the same UI that you've developed that runs on the web can run also on a small device like a Raspberry Pi, for instance. We have the WPF version of it. So it uses, we have that target specifically for a specific scenario that's called Uno Islands. I'm not going to talk about it at this point. It's probably too specialized, but it's to give you an idea. And then you have WebAssembly and Windows. So I'm going to start with WebAssembly specifically because that's the most visible, and it's been very interesting for us. That's the leading number of users that we get are for WebAssembly. Because most people want to go to the web, and if they had a code that was running on the Windows desktop, they couldn't get there. So that's how it is. So the code here is basically into two parts, but the main UI that we're going to launch here is in the main page, and I'm just going to press F5 and see what we get. So let me just slide all this on the side and make it a little bit smaller. There we go. So this is a very small application that uses this is a page, and you can see here that I have a number box, which is a control that I can change here, and I have data that is bound to the info bar control that's below. So it's a control that you can put anywhere on the screen to show information that can hover over some other controls and things like that. But what I'm doing here is just changing the numbers here, and that's pretty much what that control does. And the interesting thing here is that I can start editing my UI here from Visual Studio Code here, and it will react as a hot reload part. So let's say if I change the text here, my content is going to be updated right away on that side. So that's pretty much what we are able to do with this. And so I was talking about the fact that we have IntelliSense here. So if I just hit the content here, I'm going to get all sorts of things like, for instance, if I have, let's see, if I have the close button click here, I can have I have the ability to provide a way to react to that close button click and things like that. So the IntelliSense here is going to be providing me all sorts of access to the features that are available. It goes the same way with regards to how we go with C#. But I'm going to go now to Visual Studio, the full version of it, so I can go and show you a bit more about what the application does. So the same application runs here in the browser. So let me just do this. I'm going to be removing a little bit. So the application run also, of course, on Windows. It's the same code, but just open on Windows. So let me start that application again, and you will see that the application it's been building. What did I break? Oh, let me just comment that out for now. And the same application is running on Windows. So on the parts on Windows, the part that's interesting here is that the code that is running here is mostly done by Microsoft, or it's all done by Microsoft. So the code for the application itself is developed by me, and you can see it here, but the rest of the controls that are available here are developed by Microsoft. And the interesting part is that, and we're going to talk about it afterwards, but those controls, we ported them over from what Microsoft has done and imported those into Uno. So that's why they look the same when we're running the Windows app. And you see that the behavior is pretty much the same when we're moving the numbers here. And then if I start the application again, let's say I go onto WebAssembly, and I'm going to show you a little bit if you didn't know. If you don't know about the way how WebAssembly works, let me just show you what we're doing with WebAssembly at that point. So you can see that the UI is pretty much the same. And interestingly, you have controls like, you maybe have seen this, the accept expression. So that control is the control that Microsoft developed using C++ that we ported over to .NET and make it run in the browser. So it's the same code that runs in the web using C#, and we can see things like this. So it's a control that you can have expression in there, and that code we didn't develop. It's something that was done by Microsoft. We did everything that we could to make it run on top of the underlying platform, and that's how it looks. So let me show you just quickly what I was talking about with the fact that we have rendering underneath the UI element. So let's say I take a look at that part specifically. So that block of code here, you can see that the rendering is done that way, and we have a lot of paragraphs and divs and controls. That we have an info bar panel here. We have a grid, which is a control that pretty much lays out. It's like a flow layout, if I remember correctly. You have borders and things like that. So pretty much when we're rendering the content, we're using the DOM to make sure that we have the same visual across platform. So that's how it looks when we're developing the application like this. And now let's go to an additional target. So let's say I go to Android, for instance. So you can see here that I have my tablet selected. So it's an Android emulator that I have available here. And so it's just building and starting the application. And what you're going to see is the exact same application running on the device. So it's a bit small here. Let me put that up. So it's the same application running in the same way. So I can click the buttons. It's going to behave the same way. I can do the same thing that I did with the operators here. And if I press enter, it's going to do the arithmetic operation. So that's to give you an idea of what we can do with all this. And for the controls that we've analyzed and ported over to Uno, some of we have implemented ourselves, others that we ported from Microsoft, and we're constantly in communication with Microsoft to make sure that the platform evolves and with the richness of the controls that are provided for the Windows platform, and that we can port them over to be available on Linux, on Android, on the web, on iOS, and others. Here's another one that that if you've developed something like this, you will understand the level of complexity that is associated with that kind of control. It's a date picker. Picking dates looks like nothing. You can say, oh, I'm going to do this in a weekend. No, you cannot do this in a weekend. It's extremely complex. And that's the kind of control that does, you have localization and, Japanese calendar that needs to be handled with emperors and things like that need to be handled properly. And that's very, very difficult. And what we did is basically port over the code that comes from Microsoft and reuse that. And it's amazing because it gives you the ability as a developer to be able to have feature complete controls that are extremely powerful and running on different platforms. And when we're going on that side, I was talking before the fact that the applications are cross-platform and they have the ability to be pixel perfect on cross-platform. But in some cases, it makes sense to use what the platform provides. So if I click here on the Android emulator, if I click on that month, day, year, you're going to see that the pop-up that shows up is not the same as the one that comes up here. So that one is the default Windows behavior that you're going to see when you're clicking on a calendar on Windows. But if you're on an Android device, it pops up the native version of the control. So that's pretty important because sometimes those controls are way more they're developed specifically for the device, and that makes it easier for users to select those devices. So we can mix and match. If you want to, you can use that UI if you want. They're definitely available, but it's also possible to use the native one. On the other controls that we have available for that, and that's particularly important for enterprise users, that's the tree view. So let me show you that one. And I hope I will not have a power outage because my UPS just beeped. That's not good. So there you go. So that's a tree view. So if I have my tree view, let me just go back to my. So there's the tree view. It's available on both. So on Windows and on the Android emulator. And it's the tree view control. It can be data bound, can be, it's of course a hierarchical control, but it gives you an idea of the kind of controls that you can get. And you can test all that using our demo application that is called the Playground. So there's I'm gonna show you a few of those. Let me actually open another browser that's gonna have that. There's the Playground. So the Playground, the Uno Playground is an application that we develop that allows you to test all those controls live. And I was talking about the tree view. So let's say, for instance, I just navigate to that tree view. There it is. You can have checkboxes if you want with half states. That's the same control that you can see that's just demoed you inside the application. You can have data binding if you want. In that case, I have children here. If I duplicate that child here and add another one, it's going to appear right away in the item. So you got test file that's available here, and I can even change the content right away, and it's going to be available at the same time. So to give you an idea, if you want to test out all those controls that I'm showing you, those are available as part of the Uno Playground. That's available on the web. So there you go. So that was the explanation for that one, and I want to show you one more cool thing. So I've shown you two platforms. I'm going to show you a third, and that one is the Skia. So Skia, I'm going to be running it on Windows for now, and the same application that we'll be running as part of a UI that you can see here. So it's the same application that you could see on the web here. It behaves the same way. But now the interesting thing is that, and if you don't know about this one, it's the WSL. So if you're running on Windows, there's a way to get Linux application running on Windows, but using the actual Linux subsystem. So it's not just emulating anything, it's just a virtual machine that's embedded into Windows. And Visual Studio for Windows has a connection to that, and you can actually run your application directly into a Linux environment. So let me show you that exactly. So if I select WSL here, what that will do, and I'm going to show you that I'm not cheating in any way, is that I'm on Windows. I have my application running here. So the debugger is up, so it takes a bit more time. But there you go. So there's the application here. It's running through an X Windows server that runs on my Windows machine. So if you're running on, this is a Windows 10 machine, but if you're running on a Windows 11 machine, you even have the the newer subsystem that exists that I've forgotten the name, but that allows you to have Windows application, Linux application running on Windows natively. Wayland, that's the name. So on Wayland, you can run your application here the same way. So just to say that I'm not cheating in any way, it may be a bit small here, but you can see here that you have a Linux path that's available and that you can debug your application with. So the cool thing about this is that if I put a breakpoint here and restart my application, I will be able to debug my Linux running application that's on my Windows machine through Visual Studio for Windows, and I'm going to get to be able to debug and get all the features that the debugger is able to provide. That is available also from Visual Studio Code, being able to debug from to a Windows machine, to Windows subsystem for Linux. So that's one of the cool features about that one. So that means that the application that I just developed that uses the Skia GTK head can run directly on a Raspberry Pi or on the Linux machine without changing anything. So that's the cool part. So on the let me actually keep the application running. On the other things that we have with regards to the way we're handling applications and the way to display controls, we have let me just remove the diff. On the controls that are available is the tab view, and the tab view is one of the interesting controls, because if you're making somehow complex applications, you're gonna need to have tabs in your application to display content, because if you have multiple documents open and things like that, that's the way to go. So that's the kind of control that is very important. That control is also a control that's used by Windows, and if you've used the terminal, I think I have it here. No, I don't have it installed. I think it's on my other machine. So the terminal application for Windows uses that specific control. So it's the same code that runs as part of the Windows operating system. So that's pretty cool. One of the other things that is particularly important when you're running an application from as an enterprise, my apologies, you're gonna need a way to display data. So let me just show you that. So let me just copy over one small piece of code. There we go. So I have a data grid here. I'm just gonna be removing, I had some piece that I checked out before, small bug that I had to fix, which is going to be available very soon. And there you go. That's a data grid control, and you can see that I have data, I can resize things, I can sort. Well, the sorting is not enabled for that particular column, but I can edit in place. I can have things like this. I can check the boxes here, and it's the same thing when I go on the web. So let me show you that one on the web, and that's where it gets particularly interesting. And I'm going to show you one of the uses of that particular control when it runs on the web. I think I had that running already. And it's a particularly important control when you're in an enterprise environment, because you're going to want to show data. If your framework doesn't have a data grid, then I mean, it's kind of like not having a date picker. it's gonna be very difficult for you to work with with that framework. So there you go, the same data grid control, and that control is coming from another toolkit, which is called the Windows Community Toolkit. It was originally a piece of code that was available as part of Silverlight, so the previous iterations of Microsoft's XAML, if you remembered that part, and that code is coming back from that time, and it's been ported over to run to the web now using WebAssembly and C#. So that's pretty cool. So there it is, and you can see. So of course the data is available as part of the code behind from that file. I just didn't invent the data. It's available here as part of a few items that were defined in the code. So there you have it, and maybe a last one quickly. There you go. So I'm going to be launching this again. So I'm just going to change that part. And another type of control that are available, if you're making the type of UI that needs that kind of thing. So let's say if you're making an industrial machine or something like that, that's the kind of control that you're going to want. Being able to select that kind of control, so it allows you to select multiple places like this, and get to controls that are pretty interesting to get to run on devices that are industrial. I was about to say that. So there you have it. So now I wanted to show you one more thing about the target. So we have an application that shows all those controls. It's called the Uno Gallery. They're in action, and that application shows you something looks like this. So being able to have taking a look at the material palette, the Cupertino palette, the Fluent palette. So material is the Android one, Fluent is the Microsoft one, and Cupertino is the Apple Fluent design, Apple design. I'm sorry, and you can see all those controls. So you can see the buttons, the date picker that I've shown you a bit before, your cards control that are from material, and you can test all those controls live on the web, and of course using the light and dark theming, which is particularly important nowadays. So all all of that is supported by Uno platform. And it actually even follows when you're live changing your theme on your device. It will be available as well. So there's that. One of the cool things that we had with the Uno platform, and that's going to be a little bit more demo, is the Uno calculator, and that's an interesting demo. We ported the code from Microsoft, that is the Windows calculator. Pretty much, if you launch the Windows calculator, that's that same calculator. I'm on Windows 10, and that's the real one, the official one that runs on Windows, and that one is the WebAssembly version of it. So because Microsoft provided the code, it was put open source. We took that code and ported it over to run on the Uno platform, so that it runs pretty much the same way. And the interesting part here is that calculator is running code that dates back from the 1990s. I think the oldest one is 1993. It's a C++ code that does infinite precision computation for that calculator, and it's actually pretty cool to see all that running on the web. You can even have the volume and length and all of that available directly on there. So we ported that to Android and iOS. If you go to the Android store and Apple store, you're gonna get, if you search for Uno calculator, you're gonna get that calculator on your device. And that's even more interesting that on the iPad there's no out-of-the-box calculator, and the Uno calculator works, and it also supports being input on the side because that calculator was made to run on phones. And so if you resize everything, then you get to things that are, for instance, you get a programmer, the programmer version of the calculator, and you if you didn't know about that one, it's actually interesting. You can see all the bit fields that are available. So that's one of the cool things that are available as part of the Uno platform, and being able to port code that was available on other platforms. So there you have it. So let me just jump back to the slides and continue a little bit about what we were talking about. Oh, I should have always forget about that one. Okay, so our coverage is pretty large, of course, and it grows by every week. I see. Oh, okay, so it's yeah, it's spam. We have a lot of coverage. We have buttons, checkboxes, comment bars, flyouts, menus, and things like that. All of that is available as part of what Uno provides. And I'm probably going to be showing you actually another demo application that we've developed that uses the Uno platform. And if you're in the .NET ecosystem, it's called the NuGet Package Explorer. I'm going to show that to you afterwards. And interestingly, Microsoft is Uno's largest code contributor, because as we're importing code that comes from Windows, like for instance, importing the date picker, we're talking about 39 files, 11 1,000 lines of C++ code, unit tests and XAML and localization and things like that. That's massive piece of code. And all of that was imported because Microsoft allowed us to have access to that code. And gives leaps and bounds to get those features to you, the developers, for free, pretty much. So that's the cool things. So the interesting part as well with all this, and because it's the .NET ecosystem, is the ability to use any kind of .NET standard library. So any library that has been developed, one of the most prominent one is the JSON.NET library that provides the ability to deserialize and serialize JSON content. That one is a .NET library, and it's available and runs on the web. But many other libraries can run, and even the C# compiler can run inside of the browser or on the other targets as well, because it's a piece of C# and it runs everywhere now because as a result. So that's pretty cool. We even have SQLite running on the web. We have lightning charts, so that those are charts that have been developed by the community, and other reactive UI programming and things like that are available. So that's pretty nice. We also providing a UI testing framework with Uno UI Test. That's a particularly important framework for us, and we're using it for doing and making sure that we're not having regressions that are introduced in the Uno platform where we're developing it, and it runs for iOS, Android, and WebAssembly, and we're getting to Linux as well, and other platforms, and we're dogfooding our own thing. So when you're going to be using it, if you're developing an application, you can rest assured that we've tested it and we know it works. So that's pretty cool. So that's fit for Uno UI Test. We also have C# support for WebAssembly, so that one is particularly important. Also, we have a lot of developers that want to use pixel-driven rendering for their application when running across all targets. So we're not talking just web. So C# was available for iOS, Windows, Androids, Tizen to run on TVs and things like that. And it's also now available as part of the web. So
Jérôme?
kind of render. Yes.
There is a comment on here. Any estimated time of arrival on Dev Express?
So that I don't know. That's very interesting. But I do know we have discussions with them. So stay tuned. That's all I can say at this point. But I know people have been interested, and the most important part for this is to make sure that if you're in the process of evaluating, ask questions to the vendors that don't have support for Uno, because it may show the interest for them. That's how we've been working with Infragistics and Syncfusion to get their controls available. So for Dev Express, show your interest. That's what companies want to see. So there you have it for C#. Of course, as I was saying, we support theming. So the Fluent one, which is the original one that comes from Microsoft, and that's the exact same theming that comes from Microsoft. And then we developed on top of that Material and Cupertino. So those are NuGet packages that we're providing that you can install in your application that will provide the ability for your application to look like, to have the Material theming. And we're also supporting Material v3 theming that was released earlier this year. And if you want to do a Cupertino design theming, that's available as well. We're also providing, as part of the Uno platform, it's just not just the UI. We're also providing a set of helpers and extensions that allow you to quickly bootstrap an application using application blocks. So if you were in the Microsoft ecosystem, a few 10 years ago, there was Microsoft Patterns and Practices that were providing blocks like this. So we have dependency injection, HTTP logging, environment hosting, localization, and others that will prevent that will avoid you from having to go through all the paces of understanding all those concepts and just bootstrap your application faster. We call that the Uno extensions. So for instance, one is the navigation. So it abstracts away the UI layer, and you can easily move from pages to pages. And we're probably going to be able to post the link for the UnoComp session and navigation that was available for our last year conference. We also have a MVUX, which is a pattern. So it's a blend between MVVM and MVU, and that one is more aligned with the fact that XAML is a bindable language in a sense. You're binding data from your data to the UI. But we found that while MVVM is interesting, but it raises events everywhere and people get lost in the way that the UI thread is working in a certain way. But on the other side, when you have MVU, then you're managing your data completely as a blob. You have everything, and then everyone gets to pick and choose. We're providing something that is called a kind of a bindable abstraction, and pretty much you're providing streams of data that you can connect your UI to, and makes it easier to work with. So we have documentation about that, and it integrates into the ecosystem for Uno extensions. We also have the Uno toolkit, which augments what the platform is the Microsoft platform is already providing, with the navigation bar, tab bar, and others, to be able to do some navigation on top. It's something that's very important for developers to get to when they're going to mobile applications. Same thing for the tab bar. If you want to navigate quickly on a mobile phone, that's kind of control that you will want to have. We have a few others like card chips divider, segmented control, and others that are available cross-platform. Same thing with the drawer, being able to put something from the bottom on top of everything else. And we have the auto layout control that we'll talk about right after, which is related to the use of Figma. Of course, we have the tooling for VS Code integration. I was talking about that a little bit at the beginning. Being able to have code completion, XAML hot reload, C# hot reload that is available on device, also as part of code spaces from GitHub and Gitpod. So you can run completely in your browser. That works as well. And there was a video in there. I should have pressed the button. So there you have it. And I'm not going to stay in there because it was already available. This is the matrix of supported features for Visual Studio, because we want to get to more features than what is already available for the Microsoft developers. For the Microsoft ecosystem developers, so I'm not going to dive into those details. Then I'm going to talk about design, and that part is particularly important because when you're developing an application, most of the time you're going to have designers that are going to be developing your UI in some way, UI and UX. That's particularly important, and generally the handoff is error prone. It takes a lot of time, and it's quite expensive because your designer has done something and your developer has to take what has been developed by the designer into your application, and then it has to do mapping the colors, mapping the names, mapping the rounded corners, mapping the pixel alignment, paddings and margin and things like that, and that's very, very difficult to get to. There's design to UI, so in the different techniques that exist, handoff is most expensive, but there's pretty much nothing. There's design to code on the other end, where you basically design everything on the UI in Figma or on another tool, and then you get the code that you cannot change pretty much, and it's quite rigid and opinionated, and you cannot do anything about it. That's the low code approach, or very low code. And then what we're providing is something that is called design to UI, and it's a shorter loop because you're giving the ability to take parts of your UI and generate Uno compatible or XAML compatible UI to get to your running application. We've developed Uno platform for Figma. So it's a component library and a live preview plugin, that allows you to see your design and running into your application. It generates XAML, or it will be generating something else in the future, and and you can get that to your application using localization, accessibility, reactive bindings, navigation, things like that. So everything's just fitting together from your design down to your application running by using WinUI and Uno platform. So let me show you what that means. So I have Figma here. Oh, there it is. Okay, so I have Figma. I have opened a design here, and you can see here that I can browse through all the content here that was available and designed by our designers. This is a commerce application. It's something that if you go to Uno platform / Figma, you're gonna get access to. It's free to use for now because it's in preview. And what is available here is that you can pretty much take your design here and go to that. Click the refresh, and we have a Figma plugin, so you can see it here. So it's a plugin that's integrated directly into the Figma application. And what you can see here is that I have a preview of the code that's in here that is a live application. So interestingly, it's not just a small application. It's just not a mock. It's really the application running inside of the plugin. And interestingly, that plugin is actually an Uno application that runs. So we're generating XAML, and you can see it here. So we're generating a bunch of UI layout that we're parsing live inside of the plugin. And that makes for something that you can actually test. So I can type in things here, and the behavior of the application is going to be very close to what is going to be in the actual application, because the design and the layout is going to be the same. So that is pretty powerful. And you can even test the light and dark theming with all this. So that's pretty cool. And let's say I can go and let's say test out my login page and see what the behavior will be with the animations and showing the application available. So the important part here is that I can copy paste the content of that. I can even have all the colors that are used by the design that is available here, so I can make sure that my developer is not going to be losing any time trying to get all the colors that are available and part of all this. I can even have, if I click here, you can see that I can even provide some data for the UI to display the content properly. So if I do this, the data that is part of the data context here, I think I can even change the content here. So let's say if I do this, I think it should be updating, or maybe not at that location. It's not updating right away. So it's not exactly like the other application that I've shown you a bit before, but that's the idea. So this is the actual running application. So that's pretty cool. So that's what Figma is, and you can go and change all the designs here with the colors, and change the height and colors and rounded corners of everything that's available as part of the UI, and iterate very quickly to get to something that will look the same when your application is actually running. So that's the small demo for the Figma plugin. Now let's go back quickly to the Uno platform Figma. So there's a video if you want to take a look at. Let me go back through that one. So we have the commerce sample. So the e-commerce sample you can copy onto your own environment for Figma and test it out and see all the designed screens, and test it out for your development. So there you have it. So to get back to the application that we've been developing, this one is actually an important one. And this is actually our most used application publicly, at least. And we have clients that are actually way bigger than that, but it's actually very interesting. So this is NuGet.info. This is a WebAssembly application that has been developed by our team, and it's allowing to see all the packages that are available as part of the .NET ecosystem using NuGet. Pretty much the same thing as you would see with NPM or Cargo or things like that when you're developing applications for other ecosystems. And I want to show you that specific applications because it shows many of the features that are available. So for instance, on the web, you can do open. If I want to open a NuGet package that's locally on my machine, I can do file open. It's going to be using the local files. If I open a NuGet package here, so there's the download here, you have the tree views that is used here. You can have all the content that's available. And I was talking about having the controls here for the data grid. So this is one of the uses for the data grid. So being able to see all the references for a specific DLL that I have here. Same thing for the BDBs here. So that's the type of content that we get. And also, one of the cool things here is that Uno on the web, but it's also available on other targets. We're providing the ability to have the integration between XAML content that's fully .NET and content that's developed and that's fully JavaScript. So what you're seeing here is the Monaco editor. This is the editor that's used by Visual Studio Code itself. And we are integrating that as part of a control that's inside of the UI, and it blends in with the rest of the application. So that's the kind of things that that people are doing. We have examples of people that have been developing applications that use 3.js or any kind of DevExpress environment, DevExpress controls. And there was a question about this before. So you can integrate that kind of controls directly into your WebAssembly application as needed. So that's a pretty cool application, and pretty proud of this one because it's used a lot, and I'm using it every day to be honest, because it allows me to see the contents of NuGet packages and go very quickly. We have big plans for this app, like doing additional things like having custom feeds and things like that. But it's a pretty cool application. Let's go back to the code here. We have other clients that have been developing applications like the UK's Central Laser Facility. They're doing things with cool lasers and UIs, and they're running that on Android and other targets. And that's pretty cool to see. It's all about having code and skill reviews. That's very nice to see. So there you have it. That's a brief introduction to what Uno is able to do. I can definitely dive into additional samples if there's enough time. You can try Uno by going to platform.uno or talk to us on Discord directly, or of course go to GitHub discussions. That's where there's the most activity lately, because it's also where we get all the knowledge base available at that point. We also have books that have been published. I don't have the slides for this, but there's a book that has been published. If you search for Uno platform on Amazon, there's a book by Sky Huffling that she published recently. So that's very cool to see. And also there are courses that are available on Udemy for the Uno platform, so you can train yourself to get to your application faster, to get to your application developed faster. So there you have it.
Oh, there we go. All right, I think I'm added to the stream now. Well, yeah, thank you very much. I did post or put in the comments a link to the Udemy course, which is I think about an hour and a half worth of instruction, kind of getting you used to that. I just looked up Uno on Amazon, and I'm getting the card game, so I have to look a little bit.
So I have to search Uno platform specifically, otherwise
Uno
you're going to
platform,
get a bit too loud. Yes, exactly.
So, any last questions here? Pretty quiet out there tonight, but appreciate it. And of course, this is available for review at any time. I'll probably watch it again because I'm so busy doing stuff here that I miss half of the presentation. So I will watch it again.
That's fine. I can probably show you just one more cool demos. If people are technical enough and gonna get to like that one.
Our audience is definitely technical enough.
So there you go. So this one is kind of I call that a tech soup because it's a mix of many things, but it's on the side here you have C#, actual C# code that's inside of a Monaco editor, and here you have a blank screen for now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the execute button, and what that will do is it will compile in my browser that code that's written in C# and load the resulting code in memory, and it will execute that. And what the code does, and what you can see here, is that it uses Entity Framework Core, which is an ORM library that's for .NET, and it stores the data to a SQLite database that's been compiled to WebAssembly. So that's why I'm saying it's a tech soup. That's because it has so many things crammed in. And the mind-blowing thing is that the full C# compiler runs inside of the browser, and it can run code. The generated code can run and modify a database. So just to show you that I'm not lying, and if I'm modifying this, you can see that the entries that have been added into the database are actually changed. So that's the kind of things that we can do with with the power of WebAssembly about .NET and getting all those things running inside of the browser. So that's for the technical, the very technical users, and see the potential of .NET and the web and getting compilers running inside of a browser.
Okay, well, thank you very much again. I did find the link for the book on Amazon, so that's in the comments. That will be on the YouTube video chat as well. Trying to think if I had any other questions here other than what's the weather. So when you're targeting organizations to use this platform, what are you seeing? What organizations get the best bang for their buck with this one?
Well, most of the companies that are coming to us are developers that have very large code bases. So we're talking, let's say 15 years of code that's been running and developed across the years. And they mostly have, would say, Windows applications for some cases, and they want to get that to the web because, Windows is evolving at a specific pace, or they want to go to Linux, or they want to go to tablets, or they want to go to Mac OS, and getting your application that's developed in C#, not going to go there if you're trying to get to the UI as well. So that's the kind of companies that we get, large companies, but we're also getting people that want to develop their mobile applications. And so Uno is is a company that was started by Inventive, and Inventive is a company, an agency that develops application using the Uno platform. So we're developing hundreds of applications using the Uno platform. So it's not just the small pieces that I've shown you today. We're talking very large applications, and so we're talking consumer-facing applications or B2B applications or things like that. That's the kind of applications you're going to see developed using the Uno platform.
Okay. Well, any last comments, questions? We got a couple of thank yous, one from Bill, one from Richard. So thank you very much. Very much appreciated. I'm sure you get a few more of those with the video. So share with your friends, everyone. And
please do. And join us in Discord or on GitHub. It'll be a pleasure to help you there.
Right. All right. Thank you. I think that's it. I'll end the broadcast now.
Thank you very much. Thank you.